And I think this is pretty basic. Website stats are important because they help us understand our users and what people are actually doing when they go onto our website, which gives us tangible feedback about our site. It tells us which parts of the site are working, which parts of the site aren't working, and allows us to make improvements to the most important parts of our site. So the first thing that you want, the first section of stats you want to look at are around your visitors. And this will help you gain some insights about the visitors to your website. So you want to first look at the unique visitors to your site. I think you want to look, instead of looking at hits or, all those other kind of ambiguous names for content, I think you want to look at visitors instead. This will give you a clear sense of how many actual people are looking at your site. And of course you want to make sure then that when you promote your website that this number is going up. If you have a key campaign, you want to look at your stats and make sure more people are going to your site. You can also look at first time versus repeat visitors. Are you getting a lot of new visitors during a campaign, or are these simply people that you've reached before? You can also find out about what browsers people are using and then optimize your website for those browsers. And what's, I think, more increasingly important to all of us is devices. You can see if people are using mobile devices to access your website, and how many, if people are using their Blackberries or their iPhones to get to your site, and then you have to think about optimizing your site for a very small screen and a mobile browser. You can also, of course, get geographic profile and language. I think for most of most organizations, they tend to give you this information by country. So for most community foundations, this will be less useful. Although I think organizations like the Community Foundation of Ottawa or Montreal would want to look at language and see what the language of those visitors are. Next, the next kind of batch of stats you want to look at is around your content. You want to see what is the top content on your page. If there's a page that everyone's reading always, then you want to make sure that that's always up to date. And it will surprise you. I guarantee you there will be some surprises in the statistics. At CanadaHelps, we're always surprised to find that our staff bios page is very popular, and I think this speaks to the idea that people want to know who the people are behind the organization. But we also find that just the About Us section, that kind of stuff, people are really keen for that information, and so we always try to make sure it's up to date. You also want to see what your top landing pages are. Most of us assume that there's this logical process to visiting our websites, that people go to our home page and then they find the content that they need. But you'll actually see in the statistics that people come to your website on all different sorts of pages. So what are the key landing pages where people actually wind up on your site, and what's that experience like for them? When you land there, is it confusing to find out how to navigate from that page? And the top exit pages. Generally, this could be a contact page because they've found that information, they're going to make a phone call or send an email. But if there's a page or a couple of pages on your site where people are always leaving from, you might want to examine that as a source of frustration on your website, and then fix those frustrations. And the next kind of batch of stats that you want to look at is traffic sources. So you want to look at how, I talked about traffic sources earlier, so you want to see how many different types of people fall into each of these different categories. How many people are coming directly, how many people are being referred from other sites, so are your partners linking to you, and how effective is that ad you've got on the local newspaper website. And I think this is really important because if you have a community partner where a lot of people are linking from their site to yours and vice versa, you can see that there are opportunities for partnership around maybe some cross-advertising on the site, or at least knowing that there is kind of a combined audience for your website. And then you can see what's keywords, you can see what search engines people are using, and then what keywords people are using to get to your site. So if people are always using a particular keyword to get to your site, then maybe that will guide you to purchase that keyword for a search engine marketing campaign. And not to promote one product over another, but I am going to talk a little bit about Google Analytics as I think the best web statistics software that you can use. You will find that your web host, so whoever hosts your website pages, likely has a built-in like statistics software package that's free that you can use. But they're generally, I've managed a few websites, several websites, and generally the interface of these tools is really cumbersome and complicated and really hard to use. So I always suggest Google Analytics. This is also a free tool. You don't have to buy it. You do have to work with a web developer to implement it. You do have to add some pieces of coding to the pages of your website, but once you've done that, I think it's just such a powerful tool for understanding the use, how people use your website. And this is just a screenshot of kind of a dashboard of Google Analytics. And what I like about Google Analytics, and what I think Google does generally very well, is that they take complicated things and make them simple for the average user. So they take a search engine that's very complicated in terms of the results it gives back, but makes it very simple to use for a layperson. So I think that's what Google Analytics does. It takes very complex and very robust information, but presents it in a way and presents the tool in a way that's very usable. So basically, you can track stats for any period. It's got all of the different sections that I talked about: visitors, traffic sources, content, that you can find information about. You can also tie it to goals if you want to get a bit more complex. So if you want to track how many people are signing up or registering for an event, you can actually tie that to a goal and then track that throughout that event. Again, that takes a little bit more technical knowledge. But there's good help resources. You can kind of graphically see over time the traffic on your site, whether that's growing over time, or there are days of the week that people tend to visit your site, and think about what's driving that. There's a pie chart down here at the bottom that I've cut off, but they present a lot of that information graphically. So if you are thinking about getting a bit more strategic about analyzing some of the graphics on your site, I think Google Analytics is the best tool for you. The next tip for your website is to do some usability testing. And basically, usability testing is something that you could search online and find a company, and they'll charge you an arm and a leg to do specific usability testing, where they'll set up a camera to watch someone use your website and then tell you all the sources of frustration or all the places on your site that aren't working for people, or the things that are working. But I actually think this is something that any organization can, and every organization should do themselves for free. So basically what you're doing with usability testing is asking some key questions about your site. You want to know, is it obvious what this site is about? Is it easy to find the information that I need? And are the most important things visible when I arrive? And the reason we do testing for this and not just answer these questions ourselves is because we are very bad judges of whether this information, of any of this, of whether this information is easy to find, whether it's clear, whether the important things are visible. We design the site. We know our organizations better than anyone. We think the answer to all of these questions is yes, always. And the answer is more often than not no, or yeah, but I have to think a little bit harder than I thought I would have to. So basically what you do with usability testing is you find 3 to 5 people who have some time to look at your website, people who are not familiar with your site, so not volunteers, not staff members, but just your neighbors or other people who just aren't aware of your website. And then you sit down with them and ask them to navigate your site. And ask them, of course, to navigate your main calls to action. So you want them to sign up for your newsletter, or click on your Donate Now button, or apply for volunteer opportunities. And then basically you watch as they do it. And you take note of how long it takes them to complete each step. You take note of tester confusion or frustration at any point, and where it's particularly easy to use your website. And that's it. Basically, it's a very simple process, but it's something that all major website developers use because it's such a powerful tool for understanding how people use your site. Any more than 3 to 5 people, you're going to get people, you're going to get the same pieces of feedback all the time. And so I think this is just something that to keep in mind. Do it a couple times a year.